Eric, welcome to the Crypto Princess channel. How are you today?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about your crypto story. Just before we get into that, if I was to meet you in high school, what kind of person were you?
Yeah. So I was always how would I say? Almost a chameleon of sorts. I didn't fit in a lot of ways, which allowed me to fit in a lot of ways, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So you'd find me in the chess club, you'd find me in chorus, you'd find me in the band, you'd find me in orchestra, you'd also find me winning punt, pass, kick competitions in football, as well as being on the soccer field, as well as on the basketball court.
Gosh.
I was I'm mixed. My dad's black, my mom's white. So by the nature of just color and segregation at that time, as if it was like a million years ago. But I would say I was too light for the black kids and too dark for the white kids. So I got forced to play with the Latino kids, but I didn't speak Spanish, so it was very hard for me to find ways of fitting in. But within that, I realized that certain things brought people together, like sports, like games, like music, like art. So I just really leaned into those things, and I ended up DJing most of my school's house parties and birthday parties. Ended up making mixtapes on CD recordable discs. I just kind of overcompensated to show that I belonged in all of these groups that
Mhm.
otherwise would reject me, which then made me stand out as one of the only people that managed to kind of get into the mix. So, yeah, a lot of people grow up being told that they can be anything that they want, and that's really not a reality. It's a nice theory, but I did definitely have an idea that I was unstoppable with anything that I put my mind to. So, yeah, you could find me giving inspiration to those around me at all ages.
Mhm, mhm. So you were very popular, weren't you?
It took a while, but yeah, I mean, and for all the wrong things. I was popular as a class clown. I was popular as the kid most likely to fail. I was popular as the bad kid doing bad things with his friends. um, but not ever for the good stuff, right? And I think that comes with a lot of critical thinking and the ability to see what's around the corner before you get there. And so growing up, I always had ways of beating the system. I had ways of working things into being in my favor. I had ways of backdooring and cracking codes and hacking, and that's
Gosh.
led to where I'm at now in a way. But instead of using those powers to take advantage of things, I've used them for good.
So tell me before, because I think you got into crypto in 2016. What were you doing after high school and before 2016?
Yeah. After high school, I dropped out of high school, so I didn't even complete high school. I got a GED at 16. I left high school because I was making more money than both of my parents combined through a small company called PayPal and a game called EverQuest. And I used to charge people in game for uh, different things that would help them advance and level up their characters faster without putting in the time. So I was essentially selling shortcuts as well as in-game currency. So it's almost in my nature to understand how these different currencies or digital tokens work. But yeah, 16, 17, 18, 19, I was playing these online games, having 300, 400 people show up on a regular basis to defeat uh, these virtual monsters to enhance the strength and attributes of their characters. And little did I know these people were in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s all over the world listening to me without a webcam. And
Mhm.
I eventually started charging people $1 per person through PayPal to join my private chat servers to listen to me freestyle, rap, and do prank calls. So
Prank
all
calls.
that led to all that led to me digging deeper into what is streaming and what is the future of communication like that. And I started a streaming platform called Freestyle Madness. It was the
Mhm.
world's first and only online open mic. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you could jump on our platform and rap or listen to rappers. And at that time, Justin Kahn, who started Twitch and previously had Justin.tv for sports, and Mark Cuban, who had broadcast.com, those were the only iterations of streaming at that time. And so instead of following the route and path that all of my friends and parents and so on and so forth were doing in terms of the studious school hustle and grind of get a good education so you can get a good job, so you can make good money, so you can take care of yourself and others. Uh, I definitely went completely off road and off course and created my own track with the streaming platform, which it took about 5 or 6 years of hearing no and we don't understand in order for it to actually take off. And then by that time, it was almost too late because I got into growing cannabis and got deep into music and DJing and rapping in clubs. So the interest in a technology startup that's making no money just wasn't there anymore.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about 2016 now. 2016 comes along. It's a halving year. Bitcoin starts off, or the low was around about $400, and we ended the year at $1,000. It was a halving year. We'll talk about 2017 next. So 2016, how did you discover crypto and Bitcoin?
Yeah, there were websites that I was finding to be using different currencies in order to make deposits or withdrawals or to publish or to transact. I was a very avid user of Craigslist at the time as well. So, I was buying low and selling high. I was getting my Gary V on, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized like they had their own payment processing system and it wasn't PayPal. So I was always intrigued on different methods of, again, quote unquote beating the system is what I would call it, finding different backdoors and alternative routes to accomplish what you want. And I met this girl who I started dating, and she was a dominatrix, and so she needed to make adult listings in order to pull in clients, and those listings could only be done on these websites that were, I guess, part of the dark web and required you to have Bitcoin as your credit system or as your token system or as your ability to publish and post. So I read up on how to acquire Bitcoin and started buying Bitcoin and turning her cash into Bitcoin to make these listings. And then she'd go and do what she did. And then I would convert that Bitcoin back to cash, pay her out. And then I would use some of that money to throw some of the biggest raves and warehouse parties in downtown Los Angeles over about a 7 or 8 year time span. So
Okay.
that was my entry. It was never looked at as a store value. It was always looked at as a temporary solution to publishing on platforms that are, I guess, taboo in a way, but realistically, like everything else on the internet, it over time everything became more democratized and accessible.
Mhm.
So
So, who helped you in this time? Who helped you understand crypto, understand Bitcoin, understand what you were doing? Because it's not very easy, not especially not for a beginner.
yeah, I honestly don't even remember. I did have a network of over 400 people that I established that was worldwide as well, that were kind of on the cusp of where things are going and where things are at. And so I'm sure it came from some of those people that were always giving me tips and leads and suggestions of things because they all looked up to me. They didn't realize my age until 18, 19, and then they were like, oh, damn, all this time we've been following your message of the day and going onto your message boards and forums and logging in, and you've kept morale high all this time you've been in school, or like you left school, like what? So
Mhm.
I feel like I had a little bit of an advantage of having a lot of people that were kind of techie and uh, more established in understanding how things moved and worked in the world, and also kind of protected me in a way and made sure that I didn't fall susceptible to scams and phishing attempts and different things that are just predatory and created to be malicious and hurt you. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah,
It's
but
creative
a lot of it was
copy.
reading and a lot of it was listening.
Yeah, because crypto can be a very dirty place. So that was 2016. You got into crypto, you were helping out your friend or your girlfriend, and you had a little bit of help from different people who knew you. Something else happened in 2016, which was pretty much life changing. We need to talk about that. What happened?
Yep. So a couple months into doing all that stuff, and I was throwing all the parties prior to that as well. So it was the time where Snapchat started coming alive and Instagram started coming alive. MySpace was dying down. So I kind of had this influencer-esque, come party with me, day in the life, but every day type persona going on. It was around the time that Yes Jules and 40 Ounce Van had kind of taken the reign from Tila Tequila at that moment, I guess would be the easiest way to describe it. So people were watching me DJ, rap, throw parties, make art, do all the things. And then I hit a wall, a proverbial one. But in real life, I literally smashed into an electric pole the size of an oak tree trunk in the middle of the night after bringing friends out and showing them around and dropping them off at home. And I fell asleep at the wheel. So when that happened, I was unconscious for multiple days, had a traumatic aortic rupture, which was a 98% chance of death. I had leg surgery, hip surgery, heart surgery. I was told I'd never walk again. I got addicted to painkillers. I tapered off with edibles. Nothing mattered in regards to anything that I previously did. The only thing that was important to me was being able to walk again and get back on my own too. And I went from wheelchair to walker to crutches to having a really ugly, bad limp to being able to eventually walk again, despite multiple physicians and top doctors telling me that I wouldn't. So I'm extremely grateful to be alive every day that I am. And it gives me a lot of, I guess, ability to connect with people and
Mhm.
empathize and share humility and also stories of, it can always be worse. It can always be better, but it can always be worse. And so even if I crash out, let's say on some trading or, financially, I can always think about when I literally lost everything that I ever built and had no way out or exit without relying on other people. And you need people need to go through things like that, in my opinion. Adversity and obstruction and forms of that to really build a lot of character as well as strength and um, I guess perspective on what they're capable of if they just really are determined and disciplined to being their best selves. So
Mhm. Obviously, I didn't know you before your accident, but what I have obviously learnt about you, and we're in a couple of groups together as well. You're incredibly humble and very empathic. So I don't know if it comes from that accident, but I think that's just part of your character now. If we move on to 2017, 2017 was Bitcoin's second bull run. It did incredibly well. We started off the year around about 1,000 US dollars. We ended the year at just under 20,000 US dollars. Now, I know at the time you were using Bitcoin and crypto just for transactions, but that's a huge amount of, like, literally the curve went up like this. It's my favorite bull run. What did you see? Did you experience any of that?
yeah, unfortunately for me, I was strictly using this for the publishing. So I'm like, oh, price changed with this publish or price changed to publish this went up, but I wasn't looking at it as a reflection of what the market said or how many users or adoption, or I didn't think about any of that because, again, I was also beholden to just every day with a physical trainer, personal therapist, chiropractor, acupuncturist. I was doing everything in my power to be able to walk again. And so I was just stuck. The only thing I could do was literally be on the computer or watching movies or reading books or writing. I had somebody different at my bedside every day. That girl was one of the people that was literally at my bedside almost every day throughout that 2 year duration. Um, so it shifted everything in my life, and the focus wasn't really on finance, it was just getting better.
Mhm. So that was 2017. 2018, we had the bear market. 2019 was a recovery year. Let's talk about 2020 because quite a a bit of things happened in 2020. So 2020, obviously, COVID hit. There was a lot of uncertainty. People were dying everywhere. A lot of people were scared. Businesses were closing. People were losing their jobs. All the rest of it. And then there you are in 2020, and instead of walking away from crypto, you got further into crypto, especially with NFTs and women empowerment. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So the majority of the people that really came through for me while I was on bed rest was women in my life that are amazing. And I was also raised by a single mother. I have no siblings, no sisters, and or brothers, and I think that played a part in it. But I was also managing a lot of girls at that time, doing artist management and development, and I realized the differences and pay disparity in terms of the rates that they were getting in comparison to the men that I was working with. And so typically, when I have an opportunity to get angry, I choose to take a step back and rather take action. And so I thought about how would I resolve this? How can I fix this if I can't even fix this? Do people even recognize this as a problem if it's been going on so long? What can I do to contribute or help or course correct or change things up? So I started a brand called Daughters LA, a showcase for today's women of tomorrow. And this was literally like right after I was able to walk again. I was just ready to go with all of the ideas and things that I had written down, because it's one thing that's really unique when people are down and out. Most of the time, there's nothing to stop you from thinking. And it's up to you if you decide to be thinking about all the negative components to your situation or your circumstance, or to think about the positive ones that are on the other side of the mountain or the hill or where the light is. So for me, I pretty much wrote out a business plan of sorts of, okay, I can create a women's network, a showcase for today's women of tomorrow, watering the seeds of Mother Earth. Inside the word mother and earth, you have the word her and art. So I was like, okay, by creating stages and platforms for women to be seen, heard, and feel safe, you are cultivating their talents and allowing them to get more exposure, which then could change their lives based off of opportunities that they can gain. And this doesn't have to be mutually exclusive to music or art, but it could go into fashion, or it could go into tech, it could go into all these other areas. But music being a conduit or a bridge or a way to open the door, I felt like that was important. So 2018 to 2020, again, 2016 to 2018, bed rest, 2018 to 2020, I built this up with my partner, Gavlin, at the time. She's a very well known independent music artist as well. Worked with everyone from Snoop Dogg to the World Cup, even. Um, but long story short, short story long, we built this up to be a international women's music festival tied to a social platform, tied to a credit union called WeCU, Women's Entertainment Credit Union, or Women's Entertainment Crypto Union, as I started to pivot more into tech and crypto. So yeah, 2020 rolls along. I start sourcing N95 masks for schools and hospitals because I'm realizing there's a shortage, while other people are capitalizing on that and arbitraging the cost and making money on it. I'm over here, like, kind of providing a solution to a problem. And same with delivery services for bars, lounges, restaurants, and nightclubs, because I was into hospitality and nightlife and producing events. All of my favorite places that were struggling needed ways of making alternative revenue. And then in my time outside of, helping set up outdoor patios and do contactless menus and explaining QR codes and doing the women's thing online, and transitioning it into streaming from offline, I realized that there's this platform coming up called Clubhouse, and it was a voice only protocol, and it was pretty unique. I understood the value of being early to adopting different platforms. So much like being early on Instagram or early on Snap, I was like, I'm lucky I'm within the first 3,000 people. I better run with this torch. So I used it and built a really, really strong and large brand. Over 700,000 people brought into crypto through that brand. And originally that community was called NFTS Tips. And now that community is called New Friendship Tech, the acronym being
Mm.
NFT. But Yeah, I was on that platform every day and created, I guess, the world's first and largest community for all things crypto, blockchain, NFTs, metaverses, digital fashion, and more. And within that, we saw Beeple's $69 million sale. We saw Board Ape Yacht Club launch. We helped with just so many different projects over, I would say, a 2 year time span that really changed the trajectory of this $1 trillion industry. And I'm proud and happy to say that I am one of the founders of that.
Mhm, mhm. That sounds absolutely amazing. But if we break it down, you were an outsider. You're an outsider in 2020. How did you get connected with all of these companies and all of these big people to actually get this off the ground?
Yeah, so on a Web 2 side of things, I had already been a hustler, entrepreneur, a hustler, serial entrepreneur. I worked in so many different industries from cannabis to art to music to fashion to TV, film, and entertainment, nightlife, hospitality, events. I ran a creative agency and marketing firm that was full service. We did branding and graphic design, web design, copywriting, press, PR, media, the whole gambit. So I was already well versed in a lot of different areas, and it was second nature for me to explore something new that I thought had promise. And so when I realized on that Clubhouse platform, there's nobody really having conversations around technology. Nobody's really
Mm,
exploring uh, pivots in terms of currency. They're only talking about changes in their work habits, going to Google Hangouts and Zoom and things of that nature. And coming from that role through gaming originally when I was younger, I used TeamSpeak and Paltalk and Ventrilo and all these other ones. So I already understood it. And then from having my own streaming platform, I already understood that end. So I saw this being a very unique opportunity that, if you want to walk, you can, but everyone else is going to start running really soon. So how can you be at the forefront of a movement? And so I started hosting the spaces s- strictly around all things crypto, all things blockchain, all things Web3. And we would have people read the white papers. We'd have people go from wallet to wallet, marketplace to marketplace, and metaverse to metaverse. So I was giving like a free education on the future of things every day. I would bring people from OpenSea to Rarible to Super Rare to Nifty Gateway. I'd bring them to MetaMask and Trust and Phantom and Rainbow, and I'd bring them to Decentraland, CryptoVoxels, Somnium Space, Alt Space, you name it. So just by having those conversations in a water cooler or a place for people to learn in a moment of everybody scrambling and trying to figure out what's next, it just grew like rapid fire. And before I knew it, we had the largest community in the world with conversations daily, almost 24 hours at that point, happening in the space. And that's where people got really proactive. And on my end, people would constantly be pitching me projects because they saw me in a position of influence. They saw me in a position of power. They saw me in the driver's seat. So there were points where I was telling everybody to change their profile picture or their icon to match one another to show solidarity for the project that we were promoting or supporting that was launching that day. And we would have multiple launches per day sometimes. And what that resulted in is a thing called a PFP or a profile picture. And so, again, just little things along the way that I've done that have resulted in, mass adoption slash consumption and use. And so we saw NFTs take off. We saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, but that also opened up huge, huge rooms of opportunity and roads that people would never imagine globally and for all ages. And I think it's been a beautiful thing. I literally know that I was responsible for changing the trajectory of thousands upon thousands of people's lives just by sharing education and information and experience.
mhm, mhm. Just very quickly, for those people who are unaware, an NFT is a piece of code that lives on the blockchain and it proves ownership of something. Now, obviously, most of the time they are commonly associated with images, but they can truly be anything, including deeds of a house or, you know, there you go, pretty much anything. Tell me about the women that you helped. What was some of their feedback that came to you?
Um, so honestly, I mean, to this day, a lot of them still stay in touch and are in my back channels and follow me on social and have witnessed the journey. And for some, it really took them out of like pretty impoverished situations and changed the trajectory of their lives. For others, they were already doing good and they ended up doing
Mm,
great. But yeah, so the feedback that I got from a lot of women that were picking up what we were putting down and contributing to the conversation were that this changed the trajectory of their lives. People that were in dire straits and kind of impoverished situations, this helped them have a leg up and a branch out without asking for a handout. And then women that were already doing good, this allowed them to do great. And those that were doing great were able to do even greater and give back. So, I saw firsthand kind of what happens when you teach people to fish, and beyond teaching people to fish, teaching them how to build more ponds and lakes and oceans and rivers. And after my I guess, after the pandemic ended and people started going back outside again, the blockchain, crypto, Web3, NFT, metaverse, digital fashion thing that I had created was too big for me to dial it down and reel it back in and put it into a box and get back to what I was doing before. So what that ended up doing is it put the women's platform on a shelf, and something that I did go back to a few times, but right now it's shelved, unfortunately. But the crypto, Web3, etc. project that continued to get wind beneath its wings. I started traveling the world hosting the top conferences for emerging tech and innovation. I saw the community kind of span out and spread out and create their own communities. So the babies were making babies in a way. And yeah, from there till now, it's been a roller coaster that I'm proud to have ridden. I don't know if the outcome was as favorable as it could have been if I didn't have ethics or character or integrity or backbone. But
mm,
I am happy to say that I've been on the right side of history with this since the moment I've got into it. And I've been using this technology to shine light on how a lot of it can create more equality in the world. It can also, you know, operate in a fashion that we've never seen before. It can redistribute wealth, and it can also democratize information. So I was always very keen on emphasizing the importance of this technology not falling in the wrong hands, as well as being used for tools for good and impact and more. But again, cash rules everything around me. It's easier to make a quick buck and hit a quick click than it is to start launching schools in third world countries and providing resources and tools for them to actually have a prosperous life and future. But to each their own. I and that's where I'm still here and still advocating for these
let's talk
different
about,
marginalized
yeah,
communities.
let's talk about that because after you finished, well, as you were doing the stuff that you were with the women, empowering women in 2021, the third bull run, Bitcoin's third bull run, where
Mhm.
we had the two peaks, etc., you started to work with the community as well, and you started to open, or you started to do a lot of conferences. How did you make that jump from the NFT, from the NFT project to the conferences, and was it very difficult? Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking you probably didn't have experience in running conferences before.
So I did have the creative agency and marketing firm background. I did have a lot of clients that were on a luxury concierge side, celebrities, athletes, musicians, and diplomats. So I understood how to effectively communicate to people of all levels, of all walks.
Mhm.
Um, the difference was, 2016 to 2018 bed rest, 2018 to 2020 building the women's project. That forced me to get back into event production pretty rapidly. It also allowed me to be on microphones again and rebuild confidence to be able to do what I did online digitally, which is probably 20, 30, 40 times easier than it is to do it in front of people in a room. And me coming from a background of rapping and DJing, as well as throwing the party, I understood what it was like to be in front of 8,000 people, 3,000 people, 10,000 people, 300 people, 30 people. So being online and doing it, there were spaces that I had that had 10,000 people, 9,000 listeners, 12,000 listeners on a daily basis. And I have a captive audience listening to your every word and hanging off every breath,
Mhm.
waiting for you to drop some alpha or some information or some, leak or details that can help them gain a first mover advantage or, access to something that might be private or privy to only an excluded group. um, I think a lot of the reason people resonated with me is because there is that confidence and comfort behind a microphone. That's that tempo that I have already that comes from rapping, that comes from rhyme schemes, cadence, pattern, vocabulary, and more. So when it came to doing it all offline, it was even better because I already had this captive audience that was excited to finally meet the man behind the mask, finally see this person in person and not only through audio only apps, and seeing is he as cool as he's been this whole time. And it checks. It checks out. And there was another thing that was pretty special between that time of, I guess, the pandemic or whatever, because Twitter knocked on my door and asked if I'd be their expert in crypto. And when that happened, it allowed me to be a launch pad for all things crypto on Twitter Spaces, which was a product that was similar to Clubhouse. So having a 3, 4, 5 month run of Twitter Spaces with my Spaces accelerated with a real audience and no bots, with a budget from Twitter to build this thing up to be all that it could be, it swept the leg of Clubhouse. It created a whole new opportunity for accessibility for people, and it really changed even more lives. And so that happened right before the opening of or reopening of things outside in these conferences and events. And that's when things really, really took off in a dramatic fashion. And yeah, from 2021, 2022 until now, it's been a very interesting uh, environment, atmosphere, and demographic of people to be working with.
Mhm. Let's go to that. You know a lot of famous people. In fact, you know people that I don't even know. I mean, I'm not really into pop culture, but tell me some of the people that you've worked with.
Oh God. On a Web3 side or a Web2 side or a mixture of both.
Let's do a mix.
So on a Web3 side, I worked on a project with Doja Cat and JBL headphones and Harman Audio with a platform called One Of out of Miami. That was a VIP experience NFT project. I also helped with Fostradamus and his smokable vape Web3 project. Mike Dean and Shepard Fairey had an album that rolled out. Um, this guy Wookie, Boys Noise, Aluna George, Ill Mind, a handful of musicians. On a fashion side, there was Bobby Hundreds and Jeff Staples and a few others that came in. A lot of friends and peers were working with Paris Hilton and Steve Aoki. What else? I don't know. There's like 50 plus names that were in the mix of all the things. I was lucky enough to have a conversation on Twitter with Alicia Keys and Jay-Z at one point. Um, Got to represent Sotheby's and Keith Haring's estate. There's another project with Takashi Murakami and a platform called Nifty Kit, which isn't here anymore. Rest in peace. Um, Another company I worked with, they known origin, they got acquired by eBay. So I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot on a.
There's a huge amount. And
What's up?
also, I said there's a huge amount, and also you've